AI is here. The question isn't whether to adapt, it's how. Welcome to AI Builds America, where we sit down with the leaders, innovators, and everyday professionals reshaping recruiting, workforce development, and career growth for an AI enabled future. I'm Candace Washburn, along with Melissa Salazar. Let's build. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. We are going to be discussing talent intelligence with AI, specifically turning data into strategic insights, and also how AI turns workforce data into actionable business strategy. So, some of the things also I should mention, we like to kind of decide or talk through like how AI helps predict future talent needs, skills to tracking competitor hiring patterns. How does it help elevate HR from reactive to truly strategic? And so we have today, we're so excited to introduce Tina Smith. And Tina is the founder and the chief innovation architect at Intelligent Consulting Group, AI governance and executive advisory firm, which helps organizations build intelligent human-centered systems. Tina does come with more than 20 years of leadership experience, and that spans across Fortune 5 and high-growth organizations, including roles such as Amazon, senior roles, I should say, at Amazon, and in global talent, inclusion, innovation, and she brings a rare combination of, institutional depth and strategic foresight. And Tina, I should also mention, serves as acting president of woman-owned nonprofit, and that's called Women of Distinction, Inc. And she is a global keynote speaker on responsible AI and the future of work. Her work also does sit at the crossroads or the intersection, if you will, of technology, trust, and organizational readiness. She believes that intelligence without intention can damage the very systems that it's meant to serve. So thank you so much for being here, Tina, and we are happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Candace and Melissa.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
And I'm so excited because I feel like you're going to bring the human element to AI and talk about how do you balance a tremendous amount of data with that human element and helping that make workforce decisions and help people move their business forward. So excited that you're here to share that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there were a couple of things I was thinking off the top just to maybe like get the conversation started. I think that AI platforms, they can surface a lot of incredible data, right? So skills gaps, succession risks, competitor hiring signals, but many organizations, they still struggle to kind of act on it, big or small, doesn't matter what the scale is. So where do you see talent intelligence break down in practice? I know that there's a lot of disconnect that's happening between like having the data and then making strategic decisions with it. So I'm just curious, if there is that point into which it does break down.
Yes, this is a really great question. It's something I see every day. And kind of my philosophy or core thesis around it is the failure isn't the data. It's how you leverage it to make decisions. So most organizations have an abundance of data available to them in many different formats, dashboards, reporting, all kinds of capabilities to extract talent intelligence. But what's really important to do is understand how to leverage that data, how to extract the insights and leverage that to make decisions such as from a talent perspective, things like skills gaps or attrition risk or external talent signals. How do you know when someone is dissatisfied and maybe seeking other opportunities? And those insights are rarely tied to how decisions actually are getting made.
Right.
Leveraging the data the way they think they should versus being strategic about it. And so they kind of fall back on what they're comfortable with. So they revert to what they trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a breakdown because they're just really focused on their experience, their instinct, or the urgency around whatever the problem is they're trying to solve versus leveraging that data to make good decisions.
Right.
Yeah. And jumping in there really quick too, like something I think that is so hard coming from such a any large company, right? But really any company, but you have this tremendous amount of data. So how do you cut through the noise? How do you pinpoint what you should be asking, right? What questions should you be asking? And how do you really curate that data to make sure you have the right information at your fingertips to make those decisions. Is there any like insights you could part on us about that?
Yeah, I think you always have to work backwards from whatever the problem is that you're trying to solve versus just looking at massive amounts of data and then trying to determine what the problem is. So, working backwards from whatever the challenge is that you're experiencing. So, being data driven is a term we used a lot at Amazon, and it is.
Yeah.
It's really just leveraging those data to inform the insights versus the other way around for insights and then making a decision based on that. So that's one thing. And the other thing I think is to really have the right people involved. And sometimes you have the wrong people reviewing and looking at the data, and everyone can interpret things differently. So depending upon the function or the area of the business that you are operating in, you have to have the right type of decision architecture around that. And that includes the stakeholders that are involved. Who's reviewing this and making the decisions? And, obviously business intelligence is something that most companies have within their organizations. But if you just have a business analyst that's pulling data all day, who isn't actually in the business and understanding the day-to-day
Yeah.
operation of how things function, and they're reporting out and making decisions based on data without the additional insight, that's one of the biggest challenges that I've been seeing.
Yes, I can totally relate to that. How many times somebody's come to my team in the past and said, "We can't be doing this anymore because it's so expensive." And we're like, "But wait, if we did it any other way, it'd be way more expensive. Let's explain why, and we can give you that." So, yeah, great insights of bringing in the right people to read that data and be able to influence your decision from that.
Yeah. I think it's really important that just talent intelligence in general has to be embedded in the workflow itself, in the decision making process. So you're doing it consistently. It's not something you pull once a month and then all of a sudden you've got insights. It should be a daily activity. And
Yeah.
then that information over time helps inform long term strategy, not short term decisions.
I have a quick question. Does it make sense to influence with, a lot of times we do path to green, or like you'll show what the result is currently and where you need to get, like what the projection looks like in order to get to an ROI or measurable impact. Is that the right cadence with leveraging data for insights, in your opinion? Or do you create a playbook with visuals, or do you do all of it? Like, what are some factors that would go into helping make it more successful so that people will actually integrate it and be trainable, I guess? There's a lot of people that are just, I don't want to say rejecting AI, but maybe don't understand it. And so if you're leveraging these types of levers, is that the best option? And is it all in one, or is it one versus the other? And I hope that makes sense.
I think it's a combination. So, at the speed of AI, how quickly information technology is evolving, I think it's important to consistently have checks and balances in place. So, you're
Right.
not just extracting data, you also are validating data. So, you
Yep.
need to be doing that consistently in order to be able to determine when there is a problem, right? So, if you're not checking every day, you could get from green to red very
Right.
quickly and not even know that you're already there. So you have to establish a cadence of reporting, and it can be different depending upon the size of the population that you're looking at or the external factors that could be influencing the data. Some things are pretty consistent in terms of talent intelligence, market research. Some things that we use don't change every day. We know
Right.
that. And then there are other things that literally can change at the drop of a dime. So you have to be looking at what your inputs are and how quickly those inputs could potentially change. And especially when it comes to people and workforce, turnover, attrition, all the things that happen in human resources with employees in your population. Like, for example, if you're measuring, the number of particular individuals you may have in a specific job family or job role across a global company, and you have a mass exodus. If you wait too long to act on that, then you're going to be, in terms of recruiting, really, really behind the eight ball to get
Yeah.
caught back up. And then at that point, you're missing deadlines and goals because you didn't act fast enough. So it really just depends on how quickly the data source itself may be changing in terms of how you manage that, in terms of looking at a path to green or a
Right.
status.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I have a juicy one. I have a juicy one. You know, AI is this incredible tool, right? And we want to enable humans to do their jobs and help them be more efficient. And by gathering this data, right, that's going to help us determine where should we send work, who should we hire, where should we move things. But like, how do we prevent bias, or how do we address when bias is entered into the system? Because again, it's an imperfect system, right? It's an AI tool. It needs that governance. So how do we manage that? How do we make sure it surfaces and we remove that bias?
Yeah, that's a really great question too. It's something that I focus on in my company. I think governance is really crucial in these times. One, because companies are racing to adopt AI so quickly that governance is an afterthought. It's
Yes.
something they wait until there is a compliance issue or there's something that blows up in the media over how they're leveraging data or how they're treating their workforce. And then it's now we have a problem that we have to solve. So one of the things that I've established with my company is a framework, and it's a 6-step process that actually gives them a way to assess where they are in that journey in terms of establishing a governance framework for their organization. And that assess, it's called actual. And the first letter is really assessing where you are. It gives you a set of questions to ask yourself as an organization that helps you determine potentially where you might already have some risk. So then you can go back and decide, okay, how serious is this problem? Where might it be impacting day-to-day operations? And where may things not be equitable in our process? So governance is something that you have to apply daily. And I think having a framework is what helps you keep things consistent. So really important for organizations to establish those. And then constantly, we know AI hallucinates, and
Right.
it's only as the people who are inputting
Using it. Yep.
information
Yeah.
into it, right? So you can actually create a biased system just based on the people that are speaking to it and feeding it information. So you have to constantly double check. So you can't always trust the first output of whatever decision. That's something I've learned the hard way
Yeah.
is you have to, and even you can ask the same question on 2 different days and get a completely different answer from the same tool. So having multiple tools, if that is an option to check the same question or
Yeah.
decision, is something that I always recommend.
Yeah.
Right.
And building that governance up front, it sounds like that's like important when you're designing a tool or when you're designing a way to aggregate the data. It's like you've got to really set the parameters and make sure that you're
Yeah.
reviewing them frequently so you're not running into those problems, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, the capability piece of understanding who's involved in making the decisions is important. A lot of organizations now are kind of hands off when it comes to AI and handing it over to a vendor or a tech team. And then the leaders that are involved in making the day-to-day decisions that are impacting hiring decisions, they don't know what decisions are being made by the tech team until it's too late. So leaders need to be very hands-on when it comes to AI implementation. They need to be partnering with the tech teams. And when there's a vendor involved, it has to be a joint effort. And they can't just, once everything is deployed, and this is another challenge I see, is they check the box, we went through the framework, everything looks good, and then they don't go back and revisit. So you have to set up a cadence and constantly go back and reevaluate how your tools are performing.
Right. Do we think it's a liability issue is why they're passing it off? Yeah.
It's a liability issue. And then just frankly, the technical knowledge, I'm still discovering that AI is still quote unquote new to some people. Organizations aren't really comfortable with it. It's just something they know they have to do.
Yeah.
So they rely on other quote unquote experts to come in and tell them how to do
Yeah.
things. And those people don't really know their business. So that's
Hmm.
why it's really important to have that partnership.
And really good prompt engineering.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I feel like it's half the battle. And it's just somebody had asked me recently and they were like, am I trainable? And I was like, listen, it's prompt engineering, play with, what you want your input to be to get your output. Like that's a start at least just
Yeah.
for regular AI. And that means just any sort of like chatbot at this point. If you're just getting started, it's probably the best way to get your feet wet. I do have another question though. Melissa, did you have anything else on that subject at this point? I don't want
I
to
mean, I
interrupt.
probably will, but no, I'm good for right now. I feel like this is so helpful, Atina, because again, this is
Yeah.
what people want to know. Like, what going into AI, what do I have to be prepared for? If I'm leading a team, what do I need to think about? So I think you've addressed that, which I appreciate.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely. Thank you so much. I did have another question that I was kind of thinking through. So, if it's like real-time talent market data or skills that like such as adjacency mapping or AI-driven succession planning, I guess what's the one shift for, an HR seat at the leadership table? Like if there's one capability that truly separates the strategic HR function from an operational one, in your opinion, what do you think that would be and why?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what we have to get to, and I know this is something that, a lot of tech companies is being able to leverage the data and decisions in real time. So it's kind of like not just waiting for a report or a dashboard pull, is being able to use it as you're making decisions in your day-to-day operations. So the ability just to integrate talent intelligence into
Right.
business decisions in real time, I think is crucial. From a strategic standpoint, that organization should be striving towards is how do we get there? How do we make this part of our normal business operations? And where it becomes just second nature is something that
Yeah.
you automatically do every day. Or, there are agents out there that can do some of that for us, right? And deliver those insights to us. We
That's
didn't
a
get
whole
to that.
topic.
That's a whole topic, right? Yes, but
No, just
part
kidding.
2. Yeah, so it's more than about just analyzing talent data now. We've gotten way past that phase with AI.
Hmm.
It's leveraging it for strategic intelligence is the way I would put it is, you know, it has to be leveraged to inform even small decisions now.
Yeah.
I have a juicy follow up to that one too. Okay,
Yeah.
so when I think about big tech, right, and I come from big tech, there's massive engineering teams. Where I came from, we didn't have a massive engineering team. So a lot of our I feel like a lot of data that companies collect once employees are currently working, right? So not pre-employment, but currently working. A lot of that data is like tickets, and they're aggregating like how long is somebody taking to do X, Y, and Z. But there's a lot of roles like take an HRBP, for example. How would you evaluate an HRBP, right? If they're not, if there's no ticketing system saying this is how long they take to do their job, or roles again where you maybe don't have an intake form and then something logging the amount of time that they're working on something. How do you
Yeah.
collect data from those type of roles and then use that to inform decisions on where the business goes?
Yeah, I have to say right now it's all about productivity, and that includes HRBPs. So it would be from that standpoint, it would be how are they leveraging AI to make them be more efficient? So what part of their day, what part of their process, and how can they scale themselves and support more people by leveraging AI? Those are metrics that HR teams are being assessed against now is because we have bigger scope and scale because of AI. And I think that companies are being very generous with how they're positioning it and saying it can replace an exponential number of people, and the technology is not there yet. And people are still learning at the same time.
Yeah.
So where it used to be 1 to 20, now it's 1 to 200 now. And the technology has not caught up with that scale. However, I think HR professionals should really start thinking about how to get there. They have to be able to show that improvement. So I would, if I was in that position, kind of look at where I am today and assess how much time I'm spending on X task or,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
these number of meetings or this number of calls or this particular function. And then like do a quarterly assessment of that. Is AI actually helping me do it faster or do more of it? And
Yeah.
those metrics you can create for yourself. And that's something you can show, during any performance review, even if it's not something your leader is holding you accountable to. You yourself can prove that you've been able to scale leveraging AI and create your own metrics.
I love that. I think that's such good advice because I think when people think about AI, it can be scary, right? It's like what part of my job do I have to take and send somewhere else? And it's like no, it could just be small tasks. It could be an intake form that you send out to your employees, and then you have a bot pull that information and put it into another data set for you, and then becomes a dashboard, and now you have that's simple AI that you can do without having to go and interview every single person in your org, right? So how can they start small and then kind of grow from there and say, like this is going to enable me to do more strategic work because this low hanging fruit is being handled by a bot or something else, right? So I love that. I love that advice because I think that's where a lot of people, from what I've seen, a lot of people are starting there. Is like, how do we make our process more efficient, and how do we take these roles that maybe aren't handling tickets, and how do we implement AI in those roles? Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
I do have one additional question and
Sure.
then I will completely open it up. But how, like talking about, guardrails and regulations, like how do you get the leaders to trust the talent data, kind of similar to, I don't know, maybe like a CFO, for example, doesn't make headcount decisions, based on instinct. So, but many executives you find will still do that when it comes to things like workforce strategy. So, what does that look like from, that type of, I guess, cultural or technical or organizational aspects, like to give talent intelligence that same credibility and help them trust that talent data the way that maybe they would trust like financial data?
Yeah, I think trust comes from standardization. You have to have
Right.
documentation, you have to have policies, you have to have structure. People need a reference. They need something they can go back to if something goes wrong or if something
Yeah.
goes right. So we need it for two reasons. We needed to maintain consistent standards, but we also needed it to safeguard. So we need to be able to safeguard, and that's where governance comes into play, is to
Hmm.
ensure that processes are consistent. And if you don't, no one's going to have a reference point. They're not going to feel comfortable with it. It's kind of like when you introduce a new tool and you pilot it or you beta test it and you don't involve any of the users who will actually be leveraging that solution or tool on a daily basis, and you just hand it over to them and say, here you go.
Yeah.
And you haven't considered how it impacts their work, their process, um, their productivity. So people are more trusting when they're involved, when they get an opportunity to test pilot, have
Yeah.
us give feedback. That's one thing in
Yeah.
terms of trusting data, processes, and tools. But that standardization piece is really key.
Right. I remember always raising my hand specifically for AI initiatives. Like I obviously still am. The funny thing is when you're trying to describe what you think AI can create to somebody who has no experience with it whatsoever, and they're like, like, "Oh, okay." But there's just the possibilities are endless, really.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much more to come.
Yeah. And I think in terms of standardization, people can overuse AI as well. And I've seen a lot of implementations that were completely unnecessary. I mean, I get really frustrated myself with chatbots,
Oh
and
yeah.
I feel like
Yeah,
people over relying on them. And
I know.
sometimes you never get the answer that you're looking for. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you think about that from a customer satisfaction standpoint or
right.
Yep.
end user standpoint, you're creating
Yeah,
more challenges. You're probably creating more tickets because people aren't getting the answers that they want from
Yep.
the chatbot. So now they have to take it a step further, and you've got a backlog on the other end. So really understanding how to make the right solution for the right problem is key.
Yes.
And the people that have had a bad experience won't go back to that. They will figure
yeah,
out another way to get the answer they need. or they're going to, instead of using the chatbot, they're going to go to a person and ask that question. And those things aren't able to be captured outside of the process. So
Yeah.
having the right tool for the right problem and not overusing AI to
Yeah.
quote unquote make things more efficient or to eliminate people when there actually needs to be a human in the loop is really key.
So key. Oh
Right.
my goodness. I love that you say that because so many people are like, how do we eliminate this and send, have chat do it? It's like, no, no, chat is not the answer for everything, please.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Well, and even like, the proprietary information that people are entering into
Yes.
these
Yes.
systems that are, unless it's publicly available or you have consent, which even then you still shouldn't be adding this information because so much can be used against, it could backfire.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
wish more people understood that. I do have a quick question though, because obviously you have so much experience. If I'm starting for a smaller company than the scale of Amazon, do you think that the best foot forward in terms of being strategic with AI is, showing the productivity, the time savings, training, enablement, but then also, creating those types of playbooks, the guides, and then setting up, to your point, like the quarterly check-ins just for measurable impact? Does that all sounds like a good package deal
Yeah.
if you're coming into a company?
I
Speaking
think
from
the first
experience.
thing any business owner needs to do is evaluate how they are spending their time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you need to look at what is taking up more time than necessary, and can that,
Hmm.
whatever that thing is, be automated.
Right.
So starting with the high ticket productivity tasks, the things that take a lot of time but don't generate any revenue for your business, right? Or minimal revenue for your business. So things like, you know, emails, answering inquiries if you're in a sales focused organization or company where you provide a service, it's the proposals that you have to write and the presentation
Yeah.
create. There's so many tools that can take those things that used to take us 2 hours to 2 minutes now. It's
That's it.
great.
I just
It
built
Yeah.
one
really
of those the other day. I just my RFP generator.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Also, I was going to say I'm currently supporting a small company and a startup. And the other thing to look at is your vendorization. What have you vendorized? And like, why did you vendorize that? Is that something you're actually really good at, but you just didn't have the time? So you sent it out to a
Yeah.
third party who's not doing it as amazing as you could be doing it. So, like, what could you
Right.
then look at that's taking time out of your day and figure out, okay, can I automate that somehow? Or is that what needs to be vendorized? And really, I should pull back in what I'm amazing at. If I'm great at marketing, why am I sending it outside? Right. And then how much money am I spending out there versus automating, making the process a little bit more simple so I have less work, but I can, crank out the high quality I need and that I know I can do. So I think
Hmm.
also stepping in, it's like assessing where are you spending your money too, not only just time, but I think a lot of times companies are outsourcing the wrong things because a company does it efficiently, but again, having that context being internal at a company and knowing the brand, knowing the quality, being involved in that day to day is so important sometimes. And being like, I think Atina, you brought this up several times, being an outside partner, they don't have that insight. So they're just operating from their lens versus like, again, somebody integral to the company that could really propel that forward. So that's exciting though, that you get this opportunity too, Candace, to like dive in.
And I'll be honest, I'm like, listen, if we can't find it, I'll build it. Like it's gotten to
Yeah.
that point too. I mean, I'm good. I would love to do that. If this is like the ticket now. Obviously, engineering kind of came and went. We had like the internet era, the boom. I would have engineering. Let's go. Let's start building things. Agents, Melissa. Like that's
I love
exciting.
building them. I've built like 7 in the last 3 months. I enjoy it so much. And I honestly, I went to a company had in Chicago, a company, a big enterprise company had an event, an AI event. And I had never built a chatbot before ever in my life. And I was like, let me just go. And I hung out with the accessibility team and something I'm so passionate about. And they were like, yeah, you could build this for your employee resource group so they could ask questions. I'm like, wait, you could build this yourself? Like, I don't need to be an engineer? What? And so that, and so now
Yeah.
it's a habit. Now I'm like, let me build something
Are
that'll
you?
make my
Yeah.
life easier every day. Yes. But
You-
again, you can abuse it. So it's like also put it
Yeah.
down, put it away, walk
Just
away
just
sometimes. Say
sitting back,
no.
vibe coding.
Yeah.
Vibe
Uh,
coding is the
yeah.
thing for
Yeah.
sure.
Tina, what's the coolest thing you've ever seen implemented or that you got to implement or be a part of? Like, okay, I know that's like an oddball question, but just curious,
Yeah.
like, what's the coolest thing you've gotten to experiment with?
For me, what I'm really into right now is creating organizational health assessments, and I've created a few
Yes.
that do that, where you would spend hours or weeks compiling, understanding a new business and where potentially they have bottlenecks or where they could be more efficient. You can give them a series of about 15 questions and they can self-pace and talk themselves through the thing.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
you just take that data and then make a recommendation. So being able to step back a little bit from daily or individual interactions and still get the same output is something that I'm really, really excited about because as a business owner, I have to scale myself too. So in order to be able to meet more clients, I have to figure out ways to still produce the same quality output. And the second thing that is really, really interesting about AI that I found was helpful for me as a small business owner was being able to create an AI team of individuals who have specific functions in my company who I have trained to do those roles because I couldn't hire those
Yeah.
individuals to do it. So I have a whole 13 people that are part of my company, quote unquote, that are modeled after real individuals with this
That's so cool.
expertise. So I'm able to ask I don't obviously, again, trust but verify. You have to again have a human in the loop to vet. So you always want to have an expert third party before you make major decisions. But when you're just talking about daily operations and you need someone to manage incoming emails and provide a first response to a customer, potential customer, as opposed to scheduling a 30 or 45-minute consultation call, which you can only do so many in a day, right? And if you can get
Yeah.
people answers back quickly, having that expert individual that can help craft answers to those questions is really, for me, is one of the most exciting things. I'm really starting to get more into building agents as well. So I'm excited about the potential. Just really though, because we started off talking about governance and how important it is. I just wanted to add that what you put in to the systems, especially the publicly available systems, the way you set up your your AI tool, whether that be Claude or Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever you're using, you
Yeah.
have to make sure you have the right settings on the back end to protect your information, whether that be your information or your client's information or whose ever information you're putting in. There's been so many breaches lately and
Yeah.
you know, these companies are new. I mean, and they have young people behind them. And so it's less of a breach than it is human error where
Hmm.
someone exposes some information that puts us all at risk. So it's really important to think about that from a governance perspective is, are you putting in information that jeopardizes someone else's financial well-being or personal well-being when you are asking questions, including your own? So I've been
Right.
teaching a lot just to small businesses and nonprofits around how to protect their information, but still get the answers that they need to support, their business operations.
I have this like kind of out of the box question here, but as you were saying that, I'm like, I wonder if there's going to be a time where, like, when a child or a young kid gets on a website and they start interacting with a chatbot on your website, is like, there going to be probably some laws coming where you have to verify somebody's age and make sure that they're right, they're at the right level to be interacting with your chatbot. Now if you're a very niche business that a kid probably wouldn't go on, but there's so many companies out there, right, that do have interface interface with kids or young adults, and it's like, how do they make sure that their AI is set up in a way to like flag that and make sure that if a kid is interacting, that they know how to like direct that child back to like, hey, get your parent to fill this out or whatever it is. So I don't know if that, and maybe that's already happening, I don't know, but as a parent, like that's the first thing that comes to my mind is like, how are we going to start, how is that going to start impacting companies as well?
Yeah, there actually is some recent discussion around this. The White House is working on creating some legislation specifically around how children leverage AI and how they have access to it, what permissioning is involved around this. So they are looking to standardize it. The challenge with it is every state kind of has their own guidelines, and so it's kind of like how we used to try to create one global plan or policy or process, and then we would find
Yeah.
out there are outliers because different places have different restrictions, right? So that's going to be a really big challenge is trying to create something standard. And what's going to ultimately end up happening is the company themselves are going to be held accountable. So they are going to have to figure it out. They're going to know what the rule or law is, but they're not going to know how to solution for it. And they're going to have to figure out how to protect that. It's kind of like how if you go onto a site that sells alcohol, they will have that disclaimer that says, please confirm that you are, 21 years of age or older. Anybody could go on there and say that they are, but they have that mechanism in place to kind of help protect them. So it would be something similar. I think we've been seeing it in social media as well. There's been some
Mhm.
lawsuits recently on youth were targeted in social media advertising, and those folks won those lawsuits. So
Yeah.
it is very concerning. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially from an educational standpoint, is, wanting to go into schools and educate youth on AI so that they can keep up with the technology and compete for the roles of the future, but at the same time being cautious to ensure that they're not overusing it or access to information that they shouldn't have at their age.
Yeah. Or like sometimes you don't know, like, are you a chatbot? I don't know. Is this a real person? Like, I can't imagine a child trying to figure that out. Like, so I think
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
like as a company, if I'm gonna have an external facing chatbot, right, like that I've built to interface with my company on my website, like it might be just smart to preemptively put that out there, like this is intended for 13 years old or 18 years and older, or people using whatever, so it's like maybe just as you were saying, like approaching your governance of not just like what's required today but future state, like how can you scale this faster so you don't have to go back and rewrite it all the time, but like these are things that are constantly coming out and you don't know what that traffic is all the time to your website, but you should have a good understanding, and it's like knowing that, then build your tools to support the audience that are visiting your website and making sure that again whoever's interacting with it should be, and
Yeah.
obviously they could be answering simple questions about your phone bill or whatever it is, but again if it's a kid, right, you want to make sure that it's flagging that and not giving them the wrong permissions or ability to go change things or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. So good.
it's interesting stuff.
Absolutely. And I feel like we can continue, right? Like that's an entire different topic about like disclaimers specifically. And, again, kind of relates to the privacy and the guardrails. And there's just so much to do, especially for the legal system to even catch up. So that'll be ongoing, interesting to watch. So, and it's just beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
Absolutely.
it's, I appreciate you so much for talking about, talent intelligence with AI. Is there anything even about, intelligent, or is there anything additional, that we should know about, and or discuss today before we wrap up?
Yeah, I really again want to change the perspective of how people are leveraging data and insights and how they apply it just on a daily basis. And, there's this phrase that just keeps coming to me, and it's insight without ownership is just noise. So you're getting all these inputs and you have all this data now, you have access to everything at your fingertips. But if you aren't using the information in a strategic way to apply
Right.
that knowledge to improve, it has to be meant to improve a process or to help your business grow. it should always be looked at as something that benefits versus takes away. So, in that, with that mindset, I think that a lot more people would just naturally use AI more responsibly if they looked at it as, how do we improve? Is this getting us better? Is this helping improve the quality of talent that we have? Is this helping us produce a fairer process versus just automating a task? Because
Mhm.
trust in data is built through consistency, not
Yeah,
complex.
right. It's so true.
Keep it
Melissa, any
simple,
last
right?
minute thoughts? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this was Tina, this was amazing. I feel like there again, we could have 12 more episodes, so we'll just book you next
Yeah.
for just kidding. But really it was great hearing your insights, and I think again, it's how do we help companies feel confident walking into the AI, future of workforce. And I think you gave great perspective on how people can navigate but with balance, right? Like you don't need to automate everything, but automate what counts. And then when you do automate something, build your governance first, make sure you have those checkpoints and continuously revisit it. So, or phone a company that does it for you and make sure they're
Yes.
the experts. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, if you don't know, get the right person in the room that does, right? Or tune into this awesome podcast because then we'll we'll help them connect to the right people. But I think it was so awesome having you here, and it's just wonderful to hear your insights. And my last question for you, Atina, is like, is there anything that you really hope to hear continued, like a discussion continued outside of this podcast, like after today?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier, but I think frameworks are really important. I want organizations to start thinking about what it means to their business to have one and how to create it. They don't necessarily have to use mine, but I think that having that standardization is something that will be key in terms of long-term growth because the tools are going to keep changing. There's
Yep.
going to constantly be new implementations, new use cases. But if you have that foundation, it's just like building a house. You have to have that structure first, and then you can continue to build on top of it.
Yeah.
So I really hope that people take that guidance and really think about what that means long term.
Well, we appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of
Appreciate it.
course.
That's a wrap on today's episode of AI Builds America. If this conversation sparked something in you, share it. Someone in your network needs to hear it. Subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you next time. Keep building.